Thank you, Sam. That was a fantastic presentation offering really valuable insights, and we do appreciate your time here in Auckland tonight. As Sam pointed out, we are just at step one on the journey towards finding a solution. Well, it's time now for this evening's panel discussion, where we can talk more about homelessness in the Auckland context. And it's time to invite the four guest panellists to the stage. We'll bring them up one by one. I would like to invite first Viv Beck. Welcome along, Viv. Viv is the Chief Executive. Maybe give her a round of applause as well. Viv is Chief Executive of Heart of the City, the business association representing and promoting businesses located in the city centre with the overall aim of fostering its economic success. Heart of the City is committed to developing a central city that's a thriving place. A thriving place to do business, is accessible, vibrant, and generally a great place to be. So welcome along. Our second panellist is Ro Hoskins. Welcome along, Ro. Ro is the chairperson of Te Matapehi, the national Māori housing sector body. He's also a board member of Community Housing Aotearoa and Urban Design panel member for Auckland Council and the Tamaki Regeneration Company. Ro is a founding director of Design Tribe Architects. He specialises in the design of both urban and rural papakāinga or Māori housing projects. Number three on the list today, welcome along Moira Lawler. Moira is the Chief Executive of LifeWise, with responsibility for a diverse range of health, education and social services and collaborative community projects. Moira has a background in community and economic development. She's a board member of the Community Housing Aotearoa, the peak body for community housing providers. LifeWise is working with the Auckland City Mission to provide the first Housing First program in the Auckland City Centre. And fourth and finally, Graham Bodman from Auckland Council. Graham is General Manager, Arts, Community and Events at Auckland Council. Graham has responsibility for Council's operational homelessness response and support activity. He's been leading Auckland Council's contribution to Housing First initiative. Prior to joining Council, Graham worked in the social housing sector, with particular interest in developing new solutions to address homelessness in Auckland. Well, thank you all panellists for your time this evening. And let's begin with a question for Sam. Sam, we all know that homelessness is far more complex than simply rough sleeping. What do you say to people who are expecting or looking forward to a fast solution?
Looking forward to
a fast solution. I might just grab the microphone for you there. Okay. That's right. So what do we say to people who may be looking for a fast solution to the problem?
Ending homelessness for almost anybody is a fast solution. If you are providing housing first, you can house someone in a week or 10 days. It's immediate. But ending homelessness is not the same as solving poverty or addressing addiction, because the solution to some problems is at a different time frame than the solution for other problems. So that I think it's important not to expect or even have the person who's moving into housing expect, which sometimes they magically do, that, okay, I'm housed, the problems are over. Being housed simply gives you a really good platform to actually begin addressing some of the more serious problems that are almost impossible to begin to address when the person is homeless and worried about survival. So there are quick fixes and others that need the support services that the program provides. It takes longer.
Okay, so the good news is that pace may not be a problem. Let's look at one of the options, and this is an option that many people talk about, night shelters. What are your thoughts on the value of night shelters to address homelessness?
I think night shelters are good for a night, but they're not really the kind of solution that is ending homelessness. There's this concept of managing homelessness, which is, what are we going to do about the homeless tonight? Or what are we going to do about the homeless immediately? And there's I would call that managing homeless. Oh, let's get a soup kitchen, let's get a shelter, let's get some blankets. Managing homelessness. That could go on forever, and the person would still be homeless. There's a difference between managing homelessness and having a program that is aimed at ending homelessness. So if the shelter is where the person is staying while you are immediately looking for a place for them to live, that seems like a useful purpose for shelter, but not as an alternative to permanent housing.
Sam and I were speaking earlier about the difficulties defining homelessness, and we were talking about the fact that across Auckland we now have the sad sight of so many families living in cars, some families living in garages, because we have a housing crisis. So to what extent, if any, will Housing First accommodate for the growing numbers who find themselves in a general housing crisis?
Housing First got started by working with the folks who were on the street and had complex problems, but it has been used with families very effectively. It has been used with victims of domestic violence that have typically been required to go to shelters, but now they go to an alternative housing. It has been effectively used with young people, 18 to 26, so that the housing needs remain the same for all of these different populations. The kinds of support services people will need are different depending on who you're housing. I think that Housing First means you're giving affordable housing to people, and some of those people will need supports. It's only a matter of political will about taking it to scale.
And when you heard the numbers before about the numbers facing this housing crisis, what went through your mind, given the size of Auckland?
Well, I think that there's a housing planning. I don't know that New Zealand has a affordable housing strategy over the next 3 to 5 years. But listening to the mayor, I had the impression that the population is outgrowing the housing supply, and there's a gap there that absolutely needs to be addressed.
Sam, thank you. Moira, could we turn to you now? Moira, as we've just heard, leads LifeWise. It's one of several agencies under the banner of the new Auckland Housing First Collective. So I guess maybe we could get from you a brief overview of the collective and how Housing First as a model will be used in the Auckland context. Thanks, Moira.
Yes, kia ora, Greg. Essentially, as the Mayor said, there are 5 organisations involved in 4 projects across Auckland. That's LifeWise, the Auckland City Mission, Affinity, Link People and Vision West. And as the Minister announced this morning, we've been funded for 2 years, really to demonstrate what is possible with the Housing First model across Auckland. So it's the choice of the providers actually to put together a collective to do this in a more inclusive and joined up way. So what the collective will do is enable us to have common training, common assessment frameworks, common reporting and monitoring tools, common communications, and an ability to learn from each other. And it's not just about sharing, it's also about taking a whole of systems approach, because we know, each of our agencies, from our work with homelessness, that there are systems issues that need to be addressed, and Sam was referring to some of those earlier. The collective enables us to look across the work in each of our projects at those systems issues and start to identify the improvements that are going to be needed to be successful.
Thank you, Moira. The collective obviously has several agencies, several providers. Are there any obvious challenges you will face as you get underway working together?
I don't think the challenges are so much in the establishment of the collective, although of course things are moving at pace, and so it's important across our organisations that we build the relationships that will be required. But I think in some ways that's the easy bit. We're really strongly committed to that, and I think it will really enhance our work. I think one of the challenges is the term of our funding. This is a 2-year demonstration project, so being able to evaluate and show what's possible in that time frame will be challenging, but it's a challenge that we're really committed to meeting.
Thank you. One more for you, Moira. Homelessness in Auckland is clearly visible. Anyone who walked like I did tonight through Queen Street would see evidence of homelessness. But what about the rest of Auckland? To what extent will the Housing First approach reach all of Auckland?
That's a good question, because there are 4 projects funded in this new program, in the new funding. They will work in Central Auckland, in West Auckland and in South Auckland primarily. They will also focus on chronic homelessness. So I guess one of the challenges potentially with the program is managing expectations. We are not funded to work with the 20,000 people that have been identified as severely housing deprived. We are being funded to demonstrate what's possible with identified cohorts. And part of that work that we will be doing, part of the opportunity actually for our work to make an international contribution is in the development of a kaupapa Māori framework for Housing First. So we're really excited about the potential in that.
Moira, thank you. Ro, let's come to you now. Homelessness in Auckland is very much a multicultural issue. Figures out last year from Auckland City Mission show that more than half, around 53% of rough sleepers are Māori. Around a third, or 33%, are European, 9% Pacific, and the rest unknown. So given that big number, more than half being Māori, what options do you believe will be available to the service providers trying to help the people you work with?
Yes, it's ironic that in 1840, when Ngāti Whātua invited the establishment of European settlement here in Auckland, that there were 0 Māori homeless. In fact, they were building the homes for the settlers at that time. And so it's an indictment on the colonisation process, obviously, that we are in that situation right now. I think the options that are before us are very encouraging, though. I think the fact that Ngāti Whātua in particular are closely involved with the collective through Affinity is very encouraging. And I think that the work that's been done already with the collective to customise the Housing First approach to include the kaupapa Māori framework is very encouraging. And I guess where we're heading with that approach is the opportunity for Māori to be looking after Māori, iwi to be looking after iwi. And I think from a manaakitanga perspective, manaakitanga, the responsibility to look after visitors to your city. It's great to see Ngāti Whātua still looking after the people of Tāmaki.
So there is some optimism from you, an acknowledgement that progress is being made. What are the key things that need to get done well in this first year?
I think the ownership of mana whenua. There's 19 iwi groups across Auckland, and I think the ownership of as many of those groups as possible in this model, and their support for the model, and I think their ongoing engagement with these issues, particularly as we look at the wider issues of Māori housing stress, that includes making sure that iwi who are in settlement mode or post-settlement can be readily involved in papakainga developments in urban and peripheral areas of Auckland. I think the support frameworks are there, but I think the challenge is to really build on the potential that we have with really close working relationships, such as is evidenced with the collective that's been established.
Thank you, Ro. Let's come back now to Sam. Sam, a question for you. If we could look at the role for private landlords, because they do have a role in the Housing First approach, but can you first elaborate on what that role might be? And secondly, what would you say to a property owner who might be thinking, well, this is all a little bit risky? So first, the role.
Private landlords have, just like the NGOs sort of doing the work of government, private landlords are in some ways in this model doing the work of social housing. We don't have enough social housing, and the social housing that there is available has a tradition of keeping waiting lists. Now, somebody homeless is not going to be successful in a waiting list kind of framework because there's no place to send them the notification that their name has come up on the list 3 years later. So that was not an option. Unless we have a different understanding about a prioritization scheme for social housing so it can be included in Housing First, which is possible. You can set aside a small percentage of units that is direct access without the list. Private landlords have been the main source of housing because we needed housing right away. The delivery of the program is immediate access, and the private market was where we found affordable, in the low end of the market affordable. The way that we were able to work with landlords in that range is that managing properties on the lower end of the income scale is a bit of a challenge in that people are employed and they're not employed, and so issues of steady rent collection and tenancy and support for the tenancy are, without saying it out loud, a constant worry of the landlord. The programs are going to offer the landlord the assurance of guaranteed rent, the assurance that there's someone to call if there's an issue with the tenancy, and that if there's a damage to the unit, that they'll be compensated or will be repaired. Those are really stepping over and above what any good tenant would do, and it gives the program an advantage in renting some of those units from private landlords.
So your message of reassurance would be there is a guarantee and there is someone to call.
Absolutely.
Sam, thank you. Viv, thanks for your patience tonight. Question for you now. You head, of course, the heart of the city. Your focus is business. We know your organisation has been active in advocating for solutions to end homelessness, and we know that collaboration from all corners is going to be critical. So can I ask first, how can downtown businesses and property owners, how can they play a role in resolving the problem? And I should say that talking to you a short time ago, I got the feeling you think progress is already being made.
Yes, I do, and thank you for the opportunity to be here. Homelessness is one of the most prevalent issues raised with us by business and property owners in the city centre. And so we were determined to find a way to be part of the solution, and that's how I came to hear Sam 18 months ago and get to know Moira. And interestingly, reflecting back, only about 9 months ago to the LifeWise Big Sleep Out, I was invited to be on a panel, a business panel talking about this very topic, and I certainly didn't profess to be an expert, but I checked my notes before I came along here to see what I said in response to the question, how do we move beyond a once-a-year sleep out to working collaboratively to end homelessness? And what I said, I guess, in typically pragmatic business fashion, I said, well, we've got to set the goal and we've got to all be determined to end it rather than manage it. So that was quite nice to hear you talk about that. But it struck me that there were a lot of things that were sort of about managing rather than ending. So point number one, let's get the common goal, work out a plan, what do we need to do, who needs to be involved, how much will it cost, and then let's just get on with it now. So that was one thing from that evening that I recall. And the other one that I thought was a bit of a game changer actually was that Housing First was, had been put up by LifeWise as a solution, and we had a new City Missioner, Chris Farrelly, on board, and he stood up that night and said, you know what, it doesn't matter what brand we're from, if this is going to help people and end homelessness, we should get in behind it. And that to me was a really bright light of hope that we could actually work together to end this. So I'm really happy to be here on this panel tonight because in just about 9 months we have actually seen action, and I know there'll be people in the audience that say, but look out there at what's happening. The reality is that we have got the social service providers working together towards a goal to end homelessness. Fantastic. We have government money committed. Admittedly, it's might not be long term, but we'll work on that. The Mayor and Auckland Council have absolutely jumped in behind this. And can I say, in response to the earlier comment by the Mayor, businesses have got in behind this. They have actually, through the city centre targeted rate, committed $2 million to the upgrade of James Liston Hostel for emergency housing. So business is playing a role, and I think that there is an opportunity for us all to continue to work together. We want to see these 472 people housed over that, in that sort of pilot period. We want to find sustainable ongoing funding, and we just want to see results. So I'm feeling really optimistic, and I hope the people here who are not yet seeing anything do feel some comfort that there really is action underway.
And just briefly, you do see some future continued role by business and property owners?
Absolutely, I do. I think that the working together to a common goal is actually, I think, the way to go.
Thank you very much, Viv. Graham Bodman, Auckland Council, welcome along. Graham, of course, you and your colleagues are working with Auckland's homelessness in many ways, so a couple of questions for you tonight. How can local governments support a housing first approach? And also, do you think that central government still has a role to play?
Okay, well, thank you, Greg. Yes, local government does have a role to play, and in fact, we're playing that role right now. The mayor talked about it earlier on, where we partnered with the Ministry of Social Development to put in $1 million to co-fund this two-year pilot of Housing First, which is quite a significant contribution, and I think it's the right thing to do. So there's a funding option. We've been working, for instance, with LifeWise over the last few months to actually give some funding to help them do the investigation to actually develop the case to actually support Housing First. So we've been working certainly in that funding space. There's also, I think, a role that we've got in local government around civic leadership. So the mayor's been very supportive, and they've got an opportunity like we are today. So this is the Auckland Council event to actually shine the light on the problem and the exciting work that's being taken to actually work collaboratively with local government, central government, the NGO, the business community, others to actually make a really a significant push to really make a positive difference. And I think that's tremendously exciting. So there's a number of ways that local government can and is helping. Just in terms of central government, yes, absolutely, central government's got a role. I mean, in fact, they've contributed the lion's share of the funding towards supporting this Housing First initiative, rightfully so. And of course, housing, or I should say homelessness, isn't just an Auckland problem, it's actually a nationwide problem. It's a big problem in Auckland. It's a societal problem. So it's bigger than any one of us, actually. So, yep, we've all got a role to play.
Thank you, Graham. Well, that's it from the panel for now, but they are now available to you for questions. So we have about 20 minutes for questions. I'm happy to have them directed to anyone at the panel. If you do have a question tonight, please keep it brief. Make it very clear. You'll be handed a microphone, and anyone who does want to ask a question, just please raise your hand now. We have 3 ushers moving around the room. Each of them has a live microphone, so as soon as you get that microphone, you'll be on air. And already we have one with their hand raised in the right-hand side. So your question, thank you.
Yes, my name's Angela Maynard. I'm from Tenants Protection Association, Auckland. I see one problem with this whole program, and that is that in the Residential Tenancies Act there is no security of tenure, which means that at any time anybody can get a 90-day notice without a reason. They cannot go to the tribunal, they cannot challenge it, they're out. Well, that's fine in terms of if there's another more accommodation for them to find somewhere else, but when you're involving the private sector, which I believe Housing First is, I think that remains a huge issue. And I'm not going to ask anyone on the panel what they're going to do about it, because really it's outside of their power. I'm going to ask Phil Goff. Is he still here? No. Oh, God. Well...
He's not here either.
Well, maybe somebody could convey this to him, because when he was the person that introduced the Residential Tenancies Act in 1986, and at the time, housing workers throughout the country said there has to be a just cause for eviction, but he didn't take any notice of us. And so this has plagued residential tenancy law ever since. And what we need is a reason for an eviction.
Okay, well, thank you
So
for those
can we
comments.
chance-
Let's
wait,
just
I
see.
haven't
Let's
quite
just see if the panel
finished.
would
Can
like to
I just
respond.
finish? Because this is really
Well, we
important.
have a lot of people here
I
tonight
know, but
who
it'll
have
only
questions.
take me 1 minute, and
Okay,
that is,
you've got 30
he's
seconds.
now in a powerful position, working with Amy Adams, where he can put pressure on her to do just that, to change, to amend the Act so that Housing First as a program can work better.
Okay, thank you for your point. Would you like... Would anyone on the panel tonight like to respond to that?
History is a valuable thing, and clearly he's the right guy to fix the mistake he created.
Any other questions, please raise your hand, nice and high. We have 3 ushers with microphones, and I think we have someone coming now in the centre. Right in front row, microphone's on the way. Do you have a question for a panel member?
Yes, well, I want to speak, not particular to anyone, but everybody can chip in what they think. One of the things is tiny houses on government land where people rent could be a solution before making, while apartments and everything are being built. And I've talked to quite a lot of homeless people, and the problem is that they can't get government assistance unless they have a permanent address. That's what a lot of them are saying, that it's impossible for them to get a benefit. And so that's a big problem for them. And also there needs to be a situation where there is an agency that when people are teetering on losing their home, that they can call and get support, emotional support and everything. Because, the tsunami of problems arise when they're actually kicked out. But, people can reach out to somewhere before they fall off the cliff.
Okay, thank you. Moira, is that something you could respond to? I'm guessing you see this in your role.
Yes, I mean, agencies like ours, like the agencies involved in the collective, provide addresses for people so that they can receive the support that they're entitled to. And in fact, there are tiny house models overseas. Sam may want to comment. I guess, I have been part of conversations locally about tiny houses, and I'm open to any option that increases the housing mix, as long as the housing is permanent. Because, I have seen examples of people building communities of tiny houses, and for me it's the community building that's as important as the style of house.
Sam, tiny houses, was that something you would care to comment on? Tiny houses. Okay. Short. In that case, more questions. We have one down here. I'm not sure where the microphone is, and we have a couple over there. Do we have a microphone on the far left? Yes, we do. So in the far left, we'll take a question there.
My name's Andrea Rose McGregor, and there've been references to involving the people who are currently homeless. What process is that going to, how are we going to go about that?
So what's the process? Is that something, Graham, you could talk about? The process for managing them?
I think it might actually be better responded to by Moira in terms of the operational response.
Sure.
Yes, we've been involved in actually using a human-centred design process to get to the stage of what we want to prototype in the Housing First model, and that process has included quite extensively people who are both currently rough sleeping and people who have lived experience of rough sleeping. So there's a lot of engagement in terms of working with people around what doesn't work now, what might work in the future, what might you like to see, but also core to the Housing First model is the employment of people with lived experience into your teams so that that advice and expertise is part of your program.
Thank you. One more on my left. Do we have a microphone on the left still? Just coming down now. Hi.
Just a quick question. I'm Victoria Brown, my niece and great-niece. We've been providing food every Tuesday night for the last 10 months to Auckland, and we're feeding about 140 homeless people. In that time, we've provided coats, suits, food, clothing, sleeping bags, you name it. And in that time, not one agency, not LifeWise, not the police, not Ngāti Whātua, not the mayor has come to our help and responded to our emails, anything to help. I think it's great, but I hope I don't stand here another 2 years and be saying the same question. Will it change? And how can we as small organisation or private families tap into this work that's being done? Because we've seen no one off. We've seen one person get off the street in 10 months. And it's not absolutely unacceptable. And I think the fact that most of them are Maori, and the young man up there, I thought your comments were actually out of step, given that Ngāti Whātua do nothing for them.
All right, so you'd like a question to the panel. Ro, would you like to respond to that?
It's not really a question.
All right, thank you for your comments. I think we have someone in the middle here. Please do, if you can, have a specific question. We know there's a lot of passion and emotion, but we would really welcome specific questions. How can you tap in? Okay. How to tap into the help that's available. We'll try and address that for you now.
There are a range of groups across Auckland. I'm aware of ones in central Auckland, but I know there are a myriad of small and mid-sized groups across Auckland doing outreach, doing support. And, you know, I share the dream. It would be beautiful to be at the stage where that was not necessary. You know, the definition of homelessness that we are working with is the concept that homelessness will be rare, brief and non-reoccurring, because people will always leave homes for sometimes perfectly valid reasons, young people who leave a house that's unsafe, etc. So there will be people who end up on the street, and our vision is that they will quickly be able to access services that provide them with secure housing. What is the role for the informal groups in this program? We haven't worked that out yet, and so we will be, as we get the collective moving and off the ground, engaging with others in terms of what is your part to play, because as I say, this is a whole system approach. That's where we're trying to head.
Thanks, Moira. Now, I should point out that we do have a limited time tonight. We'll certainly take more questions, but clearly there are some issues here that may go beyond our ability to answer them tonight. We can't answer everything. So for those who are interested, I will give out a couple of addresses. You might like to pursue this with council later. This isn't just a council issue, but I do have a couple of useful email addresses. The first one is aucklandconversation@aucklandcouncil.govt.nz. I'll repeat that, aucklandconversation@aucklandcouncil.govt.nz. Otherwise, please do a Google search for the Shape Auckland website, where you can add your own comments. And we had a couple of questions down here. My apologies, that first one is Auckland Conversations at Auckland Council. Auckland Conversations at Auckland Council. Now, we have one here, just here. Is there a microphone? All yours.
Hello, my name's Peggy Glover. I'm with Mātātua Marae. We bound with Te Puia Marae to awhi the homeless, and my question is, Te Puia Marae didn't just talk about it, they actually went out and actioned it and helped the homeless and housed, and they took on a lot of government support and other funding supporters to help the struggles and the issues around all of homelessness. Is there any of those strategies that have been taken from Te Puia to be implemented in the policies that you are looking at and trying to move forward? Because they're very successful, but they got closed down, and really can't understand why, because they were very, very successful. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Strategies. Ro, is there something you'd like to comment on?
Te Puia Marae were going through building renovations, and they had to discontinue their service, and it was passed on to Manurewa Marae so they could embark on their building renovations. I think the hope is that as this pilot has progressed, is that all our urban marae will actually be involved in a governance role to actually make sure that the issues that they're experiencing, particularly say Manurewa Marae, that they can actually feed in their experiences that they're having at the coalface.
Thank you. Now down the front.
The homeless men that I know out in West Auckland are living in shacks or in sheds in the bush because they want to be somewhere where they can get a job occasionally. I can see the psychological reason for building the house, getting somebody into a house first, but the house has to be somewhere where there are jobs. And there are lots of jobs down the country where some of these men come from. There are houses and places, but there aren't any jobs, and that's why they've come to West Auckland and living in shacks and so on.
So once again, is there a question there for the panel?
For Dr. Well, it's Dr.
Where are the
Sam
jobs?
who has put the priority on the house, and I'd like to hear what he says about the job situation. He's assuming that there is a job.
Yes. Part of the conversation about where the person lives in this program is to ask them exactly that. It's you know, that's what that choice refers to. Choice also refers to location. So if the person has a strong preference to live in not only another part of the city, but in another city altogether, we would help them find housing that would support what their other needs are. Sometimes it's a job, sometimes it's being close to another family member, but there is an emphasis on honoring the person's preferences for location. We don't do such a great job ourselves of finding people jobs when they're housed. That's difficult. I think we could pay more attention to that.
Thank you. Question in the second row.
Hi, I just had a question about the 400, and I think it was just over 400 people that are going to be helped in this 2-year pilot. How do they feel about this program? Do you have their full support?
Moira, perhaps?
That's a good question. Certainly in the program that we've been developing, as we said earlier, we've spent a lot of time listening and talking with people who are currently homeless in Auckland city centre. The Housing First model is designed to be effective with people who are long-term homeless and for whom other models have not been effective. So, for example, in the work that we did looking at people that LifeWise and City Mission is currently working with, people who have come to us for support. We did a quick look at the set of people that are currently in our services, and on average those people had been homeless for 7 years or more. So we are talking about people who meet the definition of chronically homeless. So our program is of course a voluntary program, there's no compulsion. What we will be doing is working with that group of people who are long-term homeless, who have more than one issue in their life that is preventing them from sustaining housing, and offering them a service within the numbers that we can manage to work with. So, but we've certainly had plenty of feedback from people who are saying, we're ready, when do you start? So that will be more of the issue with us, not finding people that want to work with us.
Thank you, Moira.
Can I say something?
Yes, of course.
I just, I think that the 400 will probably come out of a larger group, so that, but the program is really not anything mandatory. The program begins with an invitation to the person. So it's, here's this program, this is the work that does, would you like to participate in it? So we would find out, I think, how the person feels about it by their response to whether or not they want to be included in the program.
Thank you. Down the front we have a question.
Tēnā koutou panel, kia ora Sam, thank you for the Auckland Conversations. Pippa Coombe, Chair of the Waitemata Local Board. I would just like to acknowledge the many people in the room who've been working in this space probably for many years. And also in saying that, just to say how fantastic I think it is that this has happened so fast. I was at the presentation that Sam gave at LifeWise, I'm sure it was only 18 months ago, and to see this happening so quickly is really awesome. So I did just want to acknowledge that, and it's very exciting that this has come together. In thinking of a question, because I know it's getting a bit of a statement, but I just thought it would be nice to kind of just to really acknowledge what has happened here and how exciting it is. But I guess the question was, how are we going to bring everybody along with us by sharing the message of Housing First? And clearly there's lots of agencies working in this space and individuals, and how can we kind of bring them on board with information sharing, and so that people can really understand what Housing First is all about, so we can really share in this vision and get on board.
Thank
Kia ora. I think that's one of the key opportunities of the collective, and why we're so pleased that both government and council have agreed to support the collective, because where we've seen this work well in other countries, this becomes a movement. This is not individual organisations running little programs. This is a movement of Aucklanders who are concerned enough about this issue to want to be involved. And the collective is a key part of keeping the communication going, keeping the conversation going, keeping the invitation for people to get involved.
Can I just add to that? I mean, I think it is fantastic, and in a really short space of time, we're all talking about Housing First, and I think that's the secret of it. The different groups have actually acknowledged, and I mean, I agree with the people that are raising those questions, but certainly as a bit of, looking from the outside in, those have been things on my mind, and I'm seeing the group sort of work through some of those things quite genuinely, and looking to sort of learn as we go along. But we've got enough sort of a body of people that are really talking about Housing First as an opportunity to end homelessness and tailoring it to our particular circumstances. So I think it just needs to carry on from there and have that common goal. It seems to me that that's how it's got where it is so quickly.
Thank you, Viv. Now we have a question on my left.
Kia ora koutou. Ko aua te hok no Ngāti Whātua ki o rākei. Kei te mihi ki a koe e whaia. Mō tō nākau, mō tō mahi aroha, mō nā tangata i naro ana. First I want to mihi to my whaia. I'm part of Ngāti Whātua as well. Now I'm peer support worker for Housing First, LifeWise. Yeah. Kia ora. I was part of the... Yeah, kia ora whaia. Yeah. I guess it's a validation that part of the process was engaging with those with lived experience, and we did that over 6 months, designing and looking at what are the specific views from lived experience. And now I'm employed, and there's a couple others, one other, you may know him as well, for Robert. So, yeah. This is just the beginning, whaia, and we'll have a kōrero later. We will. Kia ora. Kia ora koutou.
Right, thank you. We'll come to the front, but we've got one at the back at the moment, right at the back. Thank you.
Kia ora. Just interested, if there are any exclusion criteria, what would they be?
Exclusion criteria?
Exclusion criteria, considering the population you servicing, there's generally exclusion criteria for programs. I'm just curious as to what they might be.
I don't know that it's been established. I think that the focus has been primarily to identify among people who are homeless those that would be least likely to make it back into housing on their own. So I think we've been more focused on how to identify the people that have been homeless the longest and have multiple problems. It's almost as if people are doing too well, that this would not be the program for them if they don't need case management. I mean, everyone will need rent, so it's not just about ending poverty in affordable housing. It's actually the person would have to have some need of additional support, without which they wouldn't be able to get into housing and keep it.
He feels that wasn't quite answered. He was
That's
asking.
not quite the answer to the question, and the question is, if there are exclusion criteria, what would they be?
I don't know.
I think, are you saying, is there anyone that would be so hard or complicated or difficult that we wouldn't work with them? Is that what you're asking? Yeah, and the answer is no.
Fantastic.
The answer is no. I guess what Sam was saying is part of the strength of the model is it separates the tenancy management from the wraparound support. So are there things people might do that would get them evicted? Sure, because this is real world. This is not some kind of cotton wool program. This is, if you don't act legally within your tenancy, yes, you could get evicted. But what the wraparound support does is work with you in terms of, okay, that didn't go so well, what are we going to do next? Because the aim is to ensure people get into housing and stay housed.
Cool. Fantastic.
Thank you. Time has gone by in a flash. We have time for just two more. Now we have a patient young woman down here waiting for the first question and one at the back. So if you have a microphone on its way. Thank you.
Sorry, I actually agreed to let someone else ask a question, but now that I have the microphone, I'll ask the question. Now, I work with people that are mentally ill, and it's a small social enterprise, and I had the chance to have two people who were homeless live with me for a while, and they were both drug addicts. Now, they both got evicted off of the place that they got allocated to due to drug abuse. And my question is related to what happens with drug addiction, because this is a very serious issue, and I constantly work with people that struggle with a mental illness and an addiction. They get kicked out of their places. What is going to happen now?
So what happens with drug addiction? Can we address that?
Can we do it? We are hoping to house people that have serious drug addiction and mental illness. That's the goal. And what happens is the same thing that happens with a lot of people. Some people may actually start reducing their drug use because they have to pay 25% of their income now towards the rent. So a little less have a cash flow problem, and then they have groceries to buy for the fridge, and there's a kind of a natural cost of living with getting housed that helps people to reduce. And they certainly get better psychologically just because they're in a safe, secure space. But people do lose their apartments, and the most frequent reason for housing loss, eviction, is drug use, but not just severe drug use, it's drug use with others. There's lots of people in Auckland that are using in their apartments and don't get evicted. They use moderately. The eviction usually is because the person has a social way of using, and other people come into the apartment. Sometimes they won't leave, and it becomes a lease violation. The person is still a client of the support services, so that they've been evicted doesn't mean they've lost the program. Curing addiction is a long-term process, and the program is committed to helping the person find the next place, if that's what they want to try and do, or go to treatment for their drug use. We leave the decisions up to them and support them the best we can through that recovery process. But we're dug in for the long haul and expect a bumpy ride. That's how we know we've identified the right people for the program.
Thank you, Sam. The last question for the evening comes in the back row.
Hi. I know you've just got funding now, but what's the kind of timeline from here on out as a commoner to understand what the next steps are, and do the 2 years start right now, or do they? What's next, I guess?
Yes, the 2 years start right now, and some of our providers are already housing people. Others of us are sort of still getting off the ground. So across the providers, the teams have been recruited, having Sam here as part of the training made available to those teams. So it's all systems go, basically.
Thank you. Graham, just very briefly, I know there will be many more questions here tonight that we can't address. Could you perhaps recap, remind us what the options are for continuing feedback through your organisation, Auckland Council?
Certainly, Greg. I guess one way of giving feedback is actually through the current annual plan process that's currently being consulted on through to the 27th, so through to next Monday. So you can go on to Auckland Council's webpage or Shape Auckland, as you mentioned before, and actually make a formal submission. Certainly, email us at the email address you gave previously, aucklandconversations@aucklandcouncil.co.nz, govt.nz, sorry. And we will respond to any other queries that come through, or come and have a chat afterwards.
Graham, thank you. Thank you, panel members, and thank you, our live audience tonight. Thank you for being patient. We certainly appreciate all the questions we heard. I'm sure some of those answers will provide valuable insights for all of you. Now, as we wrap up, I would like to invite Councillor Penny Hulse to the stage. Thank you.